Well, here in Ghana, the former finance minister said Tekwe has been talking recently. He wants the MPP government to concentrate on implementing some of the measures introduced during the Mahama administration to control the public debt. He, for instance, asked government not to stifle the sinking fund in order to raise adequate resources for debt repayment. He says there is a fear that Ghana could reach debt unsustainability if the trend of borrowing continues.
I think that the debt situation is getting alarming, and one other point that we have to remember, end of 2016, the point was made that we were borrowing too much. We were, yes, in fairness, we were at risk of debt distress, but we kept pointing out that, look, the rate of borrowing is going down, right? And we kept telling the fund that it's going down. Now it's going up. So we were optimistic that with 2 oil fields and with more sinking fund, in fact, we had done a table. I can show it to you just to prove that. But we had done a table up to 2030. We showed that with only 1 oil field, we were going to get 300 million, US dollars from the sinking fund to retire our debt, which, because of what we call soft amortization, apart from 2023, has an annual redemption rate of 333 million US dollars, which means about 75%, would have been secured in terms of redemption. Never happened, right? And so you can imagine if we had continued, using a sinking fund for those buybacks and the redemption, because it's now 3 oil fields. So despite single spine, despite e-schools, despite oil prices going down, right, we set up a sinking fund. And we said, let's change the way we did. We borrowed from the World Bank and bundled all the treasury bills, or most of the treasury bills that we had just been refinancing. And we did the first refinancing, 10 to 15 years. We were criticized. Remember, they said you don't borrow, to pay
debt.
Debt.
Yeah.
And secondly, even as the minister said in Parliament, just recently after the bond was issued, that we issued that bond at 10.75. Yes, the markets were tough at the time. But what was the alternative? We would have defaulted if we didn't refinance. But we did not just refinance. What we did was that we said, let's change our habits. Let's set up a sinking fund. We are getting additional revenues. So let's set up a sinking fund so that this habit of borrowing and not paying down, will stop.
Well, so the debate on the country's debt stock continues. Economists with the University of Ghana, Professor Godfrey Bokpin, says Ghana's economy cannot survive without borrowing. This comes as the country's total debt stock continues to soar. Now, the minority alleges government has borrowed over 80 billion Ghana cedis in the last 2 years of office, and have asked government to show the projects that have been undertaken so far with the borrowed monies. But Information Minister Kojo Oponkuma says such demand is mischievous. Now, speaking on Newsfile, Professor Bokpin said the mismatch between revenue and expenditure makes it difficult for the country not to borrow.
Them will constitute pure borrowing. There are variations in the debt stock as a result of exchange rates developments. So, for instance, if you are looking at the CD version of the public debt, then you have to convert the external debt, assuming they are denominated in dollars. So, assuming 2 years ago, the CD to the dollar was, let's say, 4.5, and you owed $25 billion. You're going to convert that to CDs. But assuming the dollar amount hasn't changed, but your CD had depreciated to, let's say, 5.4, then you realize that the CD amount today would have gone up, not because you have gone for additional loan, but because the CD has what? Depreciated. Then there are also variations when it comes to when the loan that was contracted is being disbursed, for which reason it has been realized or actualized. But whether you look at it in terms of whether nominal or whatever, the debt stock had gone up significantly.
Okay.
So you can look at it from end to end, and say that if end of 2016, the debt stock was, let's say, 132 billion or 122 billion, and end of March 2019 is 198 billion. Then it's a very simple matter of just looking at the difference. And then you can see that this is how much the debt has gone up.
Okay.
So in CD terms, all of that will not constitute fresh borrowing.
Okay.
Part of that will be as a result of exchange rate variations.
Okay.
And that again, your debt stock would have gone up, but it doesn't mean you have taken
fresh loans.
Fresh loans.
Okay.
Part of the loans that are also taken are for liability management, because the way we have managed our debt over the years is to do what we call rollover, because we don't really have active sinking fund. So when our debt mature, we don't have any buffer anywhere. So we take fresh debt to retire the maturing debt. Sometimes we run into rollover risk. We take fresh debt at higher cost to retire maturing debt at lower cost. We have had all of that over the years.
You're watching Business Live. We're changing topics now, and the Auditor General, Daniel Demelovo, has warned that his office will surcharge heads of institutions that fail to get rid of ghost names on their payrolls. According to the Auditor General, this will help check the abuse and wastage of funds within the public sector. Speaking to Joy Business, the Auditor General said his office has already begun a process of auditing the payrolls of all government institutions.
2017, an amount of 443 million Ghana cedis was saved by government following the Finance Ministry's suspension of salary payments to some 26,589 ghost workers after a payroll audit of government agencies. Despite such an action, the issue of ghost names continues to remain a challenge. Presently, government has declared its resolve to end the menace. Speaking to Joy Business, the Auditor General, Daniel Demelovo, said his office is currently undertaking another payroll audit and will surcharge heads of institutions with ghost names on their books.
We've reached a point where we have issued what we call the management letters, which carry our observations to say when we came to your institution or reviewed your institution, maybe 20 people are supposed to be on pension, they are above the statutory age, or they have resigned and they are still on the payroll. So answer. And we are waiting for them to answer because the law gives them 30 days to provide the answer. When these answers come and they are not satisfactory, then we are going to go ahead to disallow the existence of those people on the payroll and surcharge the head of institutions who fail to remove the people from the payroll. And again, of course, let me be very honest with you. It's painful to me to see people as young as 25, 30 years with degree, masters, etc. not getting job to do. And the deadwoods don't want to go. People are above 60 years. They keep bringing contract and fake certificates to remain at post. Why? It is part of the abuse, part of the corruption which we must address.
The auditor has further urged that all internal auditors in the public sector must be well resourced to carry out their duties effectively.
They have been rendered ineffective, and this is because their independence has been compromised. The person who they are checking on is the very person who employed them, who is supposed to take care of their welfare, their growth and everything. So all I'm saying is that we should take a cue from the corporate world, where now internal audit is being our source. So let's pull all our internal auditors together under the agency, away from the spending officers, but they'll still do the same and render the same service. But then they are now independent. Not only that, their professional development can also be taken care of. Some people say they are internal auditors. You ask them what standard you use, they don't even know that there are any standards for auditing. So they can go for training, they can be supervised to ensure that they do quality work. And that the essence of that is the timeliness of preventing the abuse of public funds.
For Joy Business, Sheila Tamaklo reporting.
Now, mining companies in the country are advocating government rather makes available about 30% of revenue received from their activities we paid into the Minerals Development Fund. This, according to President of the Chamber of Mines, Eric Isuponten, will go a long way to support the rapid development of mining communities. There's more in this report.
For now, 20% of revenues derived from mining royalties and taxes by the end of each year goes into the Minerals Development Fund. The proceeds are used as a source of funding for development projects in mining communities. According to the president of the Ghana Chamber of Mines, the current 20% is inadequate for the intended purpose.
It will serve as a tool that will further empower the people in these areas to determine the nature of development they deserve. It is certainly the progressive way to go. The Chamber further wishes to appeal to the government to consider increasing the share of mineral revenue that goes into the MDF to 30% to substantially impact the development of these communities. Indeed, what we need to do to develop our mining communities is a deliberate strategy to ensure that revenues are judiciously applied and accounted for in a transparent manner.
The Chamber is also pressing on government to make use of modern technology to reduce the waiting time for regulatory requirements for the industry players.
Permit me to touch on a few challenges that require urgent attention from the states. Our perennial challenges with delays in the issuance of environmental permits continue unabated. Even though the regulatory agency has been working assiduously to reduce the turnaround time, there are still significant delays in the permitting process that impinge on the operations of member companies. Unfortunately, we must deal with unpredictable lead times for issuing environmental permits, which presents a major bottleneck for investment, project planning, and its implementation.
The sector continues to lead in tax payment for the country, according to a report from the Chamber. Ebenezer Sabute's report for Joy Business.
While still in the mining sector, government will soon be passing a resolution to compel foreigners to stop engaging in fuel supply and haulage activities. This, according to Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Kweku Asmachireme, is to ensure that such businesses are reserved for indigenous companies in the host mining communities. Now, the minister made the disclosure after addressing members of the Ghana Chamber of Mines at its annual general meeting here in Accra.
Agencies should handle that. Where we have foreigners that play that role, we give them a particular period and we take the entire job from them. This is not to discourage them from investing in the country. In mining in general, there are some rules that Ghanaians may partner foreigners to handle. But in terms of this local content, as we are preaching, in terms of supply of fuel, we make sure that such jobs are given to. Okay. And then when it comes to haulage of the ore from one end to the other, haulage materials, we make sure that that one also is given to Ghanaians.
Some energy news we are following for you tonight. Deputy Minister of Energy Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam last week gave the assurance that prices of liquefied petroleum gas could be going down soon as domestic gas prices are being recalibrated. Now, the Deputy Minister who was speaking at the opening of the Ghana Mining and Energy Summit in Accra. Let's bring back what he said.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has been implementing interventions in the energy sector designed to mitigate cost and ensure efficiency. These interventions include renegotiation of power purchase agreements on cost of generation. And I have to say that the Honorable Minister is not here because he's chairing a committee that is negotiating with the IPPs to bring the cost of generation down. We are also recalibrating domestic gas prices. And I want to say also that just after here, I'm also heading to Aqua Safari to chair a committee negotiating with the oil and gas producers to ensure that we bring gas prices down. Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing all this because we know that cheaper sources of power is essential for growth of our economy. It's essential for your operation as mining companies, and it's essential if we have to accelerate the development of our country for the benefit of our people. Mr. Chairman, whilst we work to make energy affordable, we also recognize the continuous financial challenges of the sector exacerbated by the legacy debts that we inherited. We know that the energy industry needs to be backed by financial sustainability. To this effect, the government has initiated steps, including those that will prove painful but are necessary, to achieve a strong financial health for the energy sector.
So really, how feasible is this intervention? My colleague Emmanuel Bajiri on the markets place spoke to energy expert Kojo Poku.
Review LPG prices down, we'll look at the price build-up of LPG and maybe reduce the tax element of LPG. That is the only way I can see government trying to, if government wants to release the burden of the ordinary Ghanaian and reduce the cost of LPG. Aside that, I honestly don't see how that's going to happen. There is a lot of talk of the cylinder recirculation model which the government wants to introduce. Now, if you look at the detailed operation of how what is included in the cylinder recirculation model, I would even assume that the prices of LPG will go up a little bit more than it is now. But, I mean, government is all powerful. If they think that Ghanaians are paying more and they want to reduce the burden on Ghanaians, they could probably look at the tax component, because the tax component in every petroleum product in Ghana is quite huge. So government can look at the tax component, reduce the tax component, and that will give relief to Ghanaians. You say that you will not touch the tax, but you're going to look at alternative source or where you get the LPG from. The LPG itself is not an expensive product. It's like everything that we have in Ghana. Petroleum products, if you look at petroleum products around the world, in some countries it's very expensive, in some countries it is not. It depends on whichever government and what levies and taxes they put on petroleum products. It is a very direct way of taxing the citizenry. So you can get LPG from any source, whether from Equatorial Guinea, whether from locally from the Ghana gas, whether somebody even dash the LPG to you from Nigeria or from any other country. The bottom line is that when it gets to your point, you have.
So the thoughts of energy expert Kojo Poku there. You're watching Business Live. Time to turn attention to the stock markets. It's a Monday. Let's find out how we have begun the week. Joining me is Bertha Atubiga of Gold Coast Securities. Good evening to you, Bertha. So we're hearing that MTN, GCB, Cal Bank, we expect the shares to trade higher this week. Is that the same kind of projection you have at your side?
Exactly, yes, especially with MTN. MTN has been trading some significant volumes lately on the stock market, but today we didn't see it trade even a 10,000 shares. Let me put it that way. It traded about 5,100 shares on the stock market, and we didn't see any price change in MTN. But last week it was one of the very active equities in terms of volume, and one of the equities that recorded some price changes on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
And what's happening to Benso Oil Palm Plantation?
Benso Oil Palm Plantation was part of the equities that moved last week. It was part of the equities that shed some pesos on the market. It closed at 3 Ghana cedis 51 pesos after going down by 1 peso of its share price. But currently, if you want to look at how the equity is performing in terms of the sector that it finds itself in on the stock market, we would say it's not been extremely active, but in the last month, it's not been positive as well. Let me put it that way. So for the past 1 week, Benso Oil Palm Plantation has lost about 0.28%, and in 1 year, it's lost about 51.65%. And if you're looking at the year to date, it's lost 31.04%. In the last 10 trading days, we haven't seen the equity add up to investors' capital, and it has not also traded any significant volume on the market. It's, however, lost 62 pesos in the last 10 trading days. Today, we didn't see any price change in Benso Oil Palm Plantation, though it traded 1,400 shares at 3 cedis 51 pesos per share. And if you look at the sector of the competitors that we have with Benso Oil Palm Plantation on the stock market, you realize that all of them, with the exception of Unilever, TZ Cousins, MLC, Farmworks, PBC, we are looking at the consumer goods sector on the stock market. All these equities that I've mentioned have negative yields, just like Benso Oil Palm Plantation.
All right.
Guinness, Ghana Breweries, CPC, Paul, Samba are recording no changes at all. So that's how Benson Oil Palm Plantation has been performing on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
All right, thanks very much indeed, Bertha Tubiga there of Gold Coast Securities. Thank you. Let's find out what's happening around us and elsewhere in the world in our summary tonight. The Italian ambassador to Ghana, Giovanni Favilli, has said bilateral trade between Italy and Ghana yielded nearly 400 million euros last year. He said this was because of the fruitful relationship between the two countries in their long-standing economic cooperation and shared values. But the weekend has tipped Ghana to be the fastest growing mobile money market in Africa. According to the report, the mobile phone penetration created opportunities for expansion of financial services and increased the role of non-financial institutions as much as e-money issuers, positioning Ghana as the fastest growing mobile money market in Africa. A group calling itself the Lumin National Members has refuted a statement by the Economic Organized Crime Office (YOCO), which described the investment deal as a scam and cautioned Ghanaians to stay away from it. In a statement issued by the group, it said, Lumin is not a company owned by someone to be licensed. Lumin is not a money deposit company to be legal or a scam, the group claimed. And that's Business Live tonight. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, joybusinessnews.com. My name is Darryl Kwao. We are back same time tomorrow. Stay with us.